That's the opener.
It is really crisp.
You're on.
We're gonna wait a little bit. I wish that there was music that we could just listen to music and vibe together. Let's do that while we're waiting for people. Let's do a little vibing before it's even 2. We'll just do a little vibe sesh. Am I like the cool kids yet? What song is this? I can dig that.
You know this song?
I don't know this song. Give me a little vibe check. Oh, that's pretty on too. I know. I can see that as well. Like that. Love that. I'm stoked about live streaming stuff. 2 o'clock? Is it ready? Let's see if anyone tunes in. Boom. Let's do this. So, welcome. This is week 1 as we talk about, as we go through the frequently asked questions. And I'm really excited because this is where I think that I find like just pride and joy in this. I think it's something that we all need to do is ask questions of scripture, ask questions of theology, ask all kinds of questions about those things. And so one of the cool parts is we are starting in Genesis this week, and we are going to talk a little bit, maybe this one will be a little bit shorter, but we'll talk about the beginning in Genesis, and we will talk about the days of creation and those things. And if you have questions, type them in, and we will get them going, and we will answer those questions. But also, for Genesis and creation, if you get on and you want to sound type of question, we can also answer it the following week, which is exciting. That's the cool thing about this. But before we start, announcements that are coming up. Summer camp is up and live. The girls are killing it. I have 2 cabins worth of girls at this point. Like, they are signing up quickly. Guys, doing a little slacking. I have about 3 guys signed up, which I'm still excited for. We're going to rock this camp. So keep signing up. There are still spots available, and we will, if we can't get you in, we will do whatever we can to get another spot from the camp. So we're excited. We have shaving cream night coming in 3 weeks. In 2 weeks, will be challenge night. Both of those will just happen on a Wednesday night, 5 to 7. So we're super excited about those. I don't think I'm missing anything. If you're not in a small group, join in on a small group. You want to be in a small group, let me know. We have a small group for every age and gender. Yeah, so if you're like, man, I want to join a small group, let me know. We'll join one up. We'll get it going. But yeah, let's jump into what it is. So as you look at Genesis, we see this idea of creation. We see the beauty of creation and how it works, and how God is trying to speak to his people. And we read in Timothy that scripture is, I think it's Timothy, is God breathed. I believe that's Timothy. And as we read that, we have to understand that scripture comes from who God is. Does that mean it's literal? Does it mean it's figurative? Does it mean it's a story? Does it mean it is a lesson, wisdom, poetry, laws, prophets, gospels? We have all those questions to ask, because what's going on is we are about to take a look at Genesis from the point of view that it's a story. So though I believe that Genesis is written in order to tell a story of who God is, this is not a story of absolute fact. And we have things like the idea of how old the earth is, right? We have this Christian belief that there has been held for so long that the earth is only 6,000 years old. But we know by the existence of certain things like fossils, by the existence of even lead, that that's not true. We know that the earth is, I don't know, millions of years old, billions of years old. And we know the universe is like billions of years old, and they've done that work. And so when we look at creation, we see the days of creation, right? On the first day, he created, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then he rests on the seventh. What we're looking at in Genesis is an ancient Near East or an ANE story about how they would have understood creation. That was before science existed. That was before the idea of how evolution kind of works in with God's working and how he built that into his creation. That's a story of how the earth would have been formed. And what's crazy is it rather aligns with how science functions. I'm always very clear with you guys and anyone I talk to that science and faith have to work together. They're not at odds with each other. They work together beautifully and they can intermingle beautifully. That's true if we read this scripture for what it is. So it's a story, it's an allegory. And this story represents God's power, God's love, and his grace for his people. And so we have the 6 days of creation. We have the day that he rests. And so we're going to take a look at that real quick. So we have God as he's creating, right? He tells this story and he is walking through the garden endpoints, and then he creates these two characters, Adam and Eve, these two people. And the question I get constantly from you guys, from all my middle schoolers, is if Adam and Eve exist, like what about cavemen? What about cave people? Because we have old bones, right? There was a set of bones that were found, and it was called, I think you remember, it was called Lucy. That was an old one. And we have all these, like, before Homo sapiens, we have Neanderthals and all the other names that are escaping me. And so as we are looking at that, we have to understand that if this is a story, then those people wouldn't necessarily be like the most accurate portrayal of humanity, because we know that humanity goes back 200,000 years or so, because we've found tools and we've found different things that exist in that. And so one of the cool things that we get to understand is maybe it's not a story of God creating these two people, but maybe it's a story of a consciousness that develops because they don't follow God's immediate grace, or they don't follow God's immediate obedience. Let me explain that. So if we believe that the creation story is an allegory or a story, there's this idea that it's just a story about God's faithfulness and his beginning of Israel. If we believe that this story is a real story that God created in this way, it poses some problems. But if we believe in Adam and Eve, there's something that's kind of cool scientifically that matches that. So about 6,000 years ago, all of a sudden, if you look at a graph, human consciousness is like this, and we have little bumps where they created tools and little things, and then all of a sudden there was a spike. And we don't really understand why there was a spike. We just know that humans started developing in different ways, and they started using different tools. They started using different things that they existed or they were building and making. And if you're someone that believes in the idea that, oh, they ate from fruit and they did that, then you believe that all of a sudden their minds were widened. They understood the knowledge of good and evil. Well, that spike would align with what people think. That spike would align with that idea that the earth is only 6,000 years old. And that spike would align with what they were going for. So we have creation and God creating and all those things. But here's how science works into this. We have a book, an old book. If God's revelation is this big and God's scripture is this big, these do not counteract each other. They do not contradict each other. They work well together, and they will not contradict each other. And so when science comes in, those things will work with that. And God breathes into scientists. He breathes knowledge into us, right? So for science, I'm a firm believer. There's proof of it, of the Big Bang Theory. All of a sudden, there's a Big Bang. Things start to form. Planets start to form. Stars, everything. They've identified particles from the initial thing, and they can get that back. And so then the universe is something like 14 to 16 billion years old. And so as things start to form, we have the beginning of the Earth. We have ooze or plasma, and things start occurring in that. We have vegetation that happens, water that starts to occur naturally, land masses, all these things. And for the longest time, like science and faith have just been at odds for some reason, because some people in the faith community have believed that negates, like science negates the existence of God. But the beauty of God is that he works in and through these things. And this is something that has been set in motion by the Creator to happen. This is something that has been set in motion by God to occur. And his hand is just walking with us every step of the way. And as he's walking with us, he is like evolving with us, right? He is moving that. And I'm not saying that we all come from a single cell organism, because I don't know about all that stuff. But what I do know is that the idea of ancestry and how we have common ancestors with apes and those things, that's absolutely accurate. Like that, those things are very much true. They have scientific proof on even looking at something like the human pelvis, that with gestation in females, at one point it was a shorter or a longer amount of time. But then as they started walking upright, it had to be a shorter amount of time because even the pelvis had shaped differently. And so there's all kinds of little things that point towards the evolutionary developments of humans and bones and all those things. Plus we have carbon dating. Plus when I mentioned lead earlier, lead is a half-life element. So something starts out as radioactive, it half-lifes down, and it keeps changing elements until it becomes stable. And lead is the last one in that line. And so that's like, it takes millions of years to do these half-life things. And so that's how we know that like it first started out as something. With all that said, we are going to keep marching through Genesis, and we are excited about that. And we're going to continue to talk through Genesis. And if you have questions, let me know, and we will continue to do that. And you can type in the questions, and I have Alyssa here, and she'll read off the questions or put the questions up so I'll be able to see it. And we'll answer them to the best of my ability. But know that I am someone that takes faith and science and mixes those things together. So we're going to continue walking through Genesis, just the creation stories, next week. And we're going to keep pushing through that until we get to even things like Noah's Ark. How could a flood happen? How could that ship hold all those animals? If it's just a story, or if it actually happened, and where's the ship and all those things. And so I'm excited to continue on this journey with you guys. Remember, we have events coming up. Sign up for summer camp, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.